Welcome. You're tuned into Life is a Sacred Journey. Every week, we bring a new perspective to aging and caregiving. Here is your host, Michelberg.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you at the Life is a Sacred Journey family. I am so honored every Friday to join you here at Life is a Sacred Journey. You know what? Let's stop for a minute because this morning I've been rushing all morning long. Got a lot of things to get done today in a short amount of time to do it. I've been not well this week, so I was down and out in Beverly Hills. So let's just take a moment to breathe. And if you have a window nearby, look out the window for a minute and look at the sun. For here in Berkeley, I can see the sun. It's up, but it's cresting over some buildings that are to the left of me here. And just really bask in the fact that you are here, right? That you made it to another day. So just take a moment to do that. And then I'll tell you about our guest and bring her in. Take a deep breath in. Then blow out. In and out. Doesn't that feel better? Like it opens up. I have all this, I'm very nasally, and hopefully I won't have a coughing spasm during our conversation this morning with Rachel. I'm going to say Michelberg, or I'm not sure. We'll ask her because I know I like to make sure I pronounce people's last names and everything appropriately. It's a wonderful cornucopia of sounds in our names, and I like to do them justice. Welcome to Life is a Sacred Journey. It's good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. And I love the title. Just the title of your podcast alone is so powerful.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It was a group of us, and I have to say, I have to give all honor to a group of interns that were here, and they were the ones that said, Michelle, you need to do this. And I reluctantly came to this platform. And then one day we were in my office here talking, and I said, when we all realize that life is such an incredible sacred journey, the good, the bad, the ugly, then we begin to live our lives fully, and then we find joy. And then it went from there,
Yeah.
The wisdoms of the universe come in around you every once in a while.
Yeah. And young people are, their perspective is so great. Sometimes
yes. And
I think you and I are probably sort of the same generation, and we get stuck a little bit.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yes. Well, let me introduce you to the Life is a Sacred Journey family. I have not received my book yet. I did order it. So I haven't had a chance to read it, siblings, but I will read it. And then, as you always know, it will become a part of my reading book list for the year. I've started the year off very well. I've read 6 books so far. As you know, my goal is 100 a year. Don't always make it, but it's my goal. And to read a variety of things. I really offer that to you. Read more. Reading is so incredible. You can get your favorite chair, your favorite blanket, and just disappear into, I just finished reading the Never Ending Story again, which I introduced Never Ending Story to you all. And it's a phenomenal book. It's a children's book, possibly, but it has so many wonderful messages, and I enjoyed it. I think I read it like in 3 days because I just kept sitting up with it, imagining. See, so as you get older, use your imagination, and it will help you to age this wonderful thing that we call life, right? Mm-hmm. So let me tell you about our new friend here at Life is a Sacred Journey. Rachel, would you pronounce your last name so that I get it right?
Yes, it's Michelberg.
Michelberg, okay.
Officially, it's German. It's Michelberg, but most people have trouble with that. So just say Michelberg.
Excellent. I figured that. I have really good friends over in Germany and Belgium and in that area there. And I looked at it and I thought, I bet it's Michelberg.
It is very good.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, 16, 17 years ago, was at her home with her daughter, watching television, gets a phone call, and her life gets turned upside down. Her husband was in a almost fatal accident, airplane, a small plane, and became a caregiver, was thrust into this role of caregiver where you're trying to figure out finances. Where are we going to care for our loved one, in the home, or do we need help from other people? What does that mean to with my relationship? And particularly in a husband and wife, and relationship where there was equality and all kinds of things happening in that relationship, and it changes. Particularly if the person physically changes or has cognition, which is definitely what happened to her husband. And they were a husband and a wife couple, just like anybody else in the Naked City. And boom, something changes it. So she's written this incredible memoir called Crash. And I love it. And it's how I became a reluctant caregiver. So I'm going to show it to you so you can, when you order it on Amazon, you can get it. I love the cover. One, I love that look of chaos going on, but also behind it, I'm still here kind of thing. That's how my mind goes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that interpretation. Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's my publisher that I had a choice of several covers, and I chose this one. So.
And the other thing I want to tell you about Rachel, because, I do my homework, folks. Rachel sings and helps people to learn how to sing, because everybody can sing, even those of us that sound better in the shower or in the car. But sometimes singing is just for you. And it's not to make a platinum record or to do something that everybody else. And sometimes you just want to take lessons to get better at that for yourself. That's some of the joyful stuff in life. And then she has this beautiful little dog. I have to show you because I'm a dog lover. Oh my gosh. Okay, folks, look at that. Look at that.
Did you get those off my website?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the older one, the Labradoodle. Yeah, the Labradoodle, the one on the well, you're right, is she just turned 14. Her name is Nala. She's an Australian Labradoodle, and the one on the left, he's a rescue. I found him on the freeway.
I found one of my dogs on the freeway too.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Beanie.
Everybody knows I'm a dog person. I have my dog. He was 14. He just will be celebrating and remembering his life on February 19th of 1 year anniversary, but such a loyal and dedicated. So I'm a dog person, hands down. I love all humanity, but dogs
have a special place. I agree. I'm with you.
So let's get into this wonderful time I know we're going to have together, Rachel. This incident happened in your life, total tragedy, chaos, and you were thrust into a situation where you had to make some critical decisions, not only for your husband, but for yourself and for your family. And so would you take us through that journey a little bit and then tell us why the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to backtrack a little bit to, you were talking about, we were this married couple. We'd actually, the accident happened when a few months shy of our 10th wedding anniversary. Things were not all hunky-dory. Okay. We were actually having some issues. In fact, we were just about to go into counseling, which is, when people go into counseling, it doesn't mean they're, about to get divorced. Although I think it's in my view, it's a wonderful thing to get counseling. If as an individual or as a couple, or it's such a wonderful opportunity to work things through. And anyway.
It is. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we had, when you read the book, you'll see that I'm a therapist really was one of my lifesavers. I had a huge village of people that were supporting me, but the therapist and the social workers were just my rocks. And so I'm a big believer here. So we had just made the decision to start going, and at the same time, I was in the process of falling in love with someone else, and I'm really honest about that right up front. It's actually one of the reasons I took so long to write the book. It took me 11 years because partially because I really wasn't a writer. I was a singer and a musician and a cantor in a synagogue. I didn't have the training. I was always good at writing, but I had no training as a writer. So I had to learn the craft. Yeah. But mostly because I gave myself permission to take a really long time to write this book because I knew that if my kids ever read it, I wanted them to be mature enough to handle the information that they were going to read about me. So in my mind, it's like I didn't even want to think about publishing till they were at least 18. And the accident happened when they were 6 and 7 years old. So it was a long time. I didn't even start. The idea didn't come to me to write this book until about 3 years after the plane crash. Yeah, so our marriage was in trouble. I was straying, not fully. I felt horrible guilt, and so I was fighting it, but not very successfully. And in the midst of all of this, my husband David, he and another guy were flying back from a work meeting, and they had rented a small plane. It was one of those startup companies, and they didn't have a lot of oversight as far as, you need to take Southwest, or you need to take, they're like, we want to rent a plane instead of take Southwest. So they did. And that plane had engine trouble and crashed into a vineyard in the Central Coast area, Paso Robles, San Luis Obispo area. Lots of vineyards there. Yeah. Well, they thought they were landing in a field. This is an emergency landing, but it was actually a vineyard. So one of the reasons most people don't survive a plane crash, right? Yeah, so so if you can imagine the plane is actually, he thinks he's going to be landing and he doesn't know it's a vineyard. So the cabling of the vineyard, the landing gear caught. And so it just went like that. And here's the main thing. They both probably would have been much, much, much better, come out of it much better, but they had no shoulder straps. Oh. Because it was an older plane. It was a grandfathered in plane from the 60s that they were not required to have shoulder straps. And by the way, in the writing of the book, I learned that grandfathered in is a racist term. Mm-hmm. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, I explain it. So
I did not. Tell me.
It used to be when people were being restricted from voting. And you had to prove that your grandfather was born in this country. Well, if you're a slave or a child of a slave, or you have no proof. Yeah. You have no birth certificate. You have no nothing. So that term is not. Oh. Yeah, but that's the term we used at the time. This would have been in 2000, 2005. No, we just use these terms, and we don't.
Well, and that's language, right? That's right. Language. We hear it, we embrace it. It's in movies.
It's in the vernacular. It's in our, in fact, somebody just got in trouble for saying, it was a cotton picking, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I had never thought, why is that offensive or why is that not appropriate?
Right.
So I learned a lot of things you learn, when you're writing about.
I know. Well, thank you for that teaching.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening to some interview or something on NPR, and they were talking about the grandfather, these terms that are racist and that are normal terms we use. And I was like, oh my gosh, I use that in my book. I have to change it. But so what I did was I put a little, not disclaimer, but explanation.
I love that you did that, though, because I think that's really how we overcome this stuff is we
educate.
Give an explanation for it so we can understand it. And just like you just taught me and every other person here that's coming or will come into Life is a Sacred Journey's platform, we then can pass it on. And that's how we change the trajectory of stuff.
Exactly. You just have to inform. So this horrible thing happened, and it became very clear, essentially his skull. Because they had no shoulder belts on, their heads were smashed against the, instrument panel of the little airplane.
Okay.
And the other guy, the pilot, came out of it much more. He did not pass out. He did not ever.
Oh.
And so he was able to pull my husband from the wreckage because my husband was out, and his my husband's skull was split open from here to here, and we get the call. I get the call expecting it to be him saying, "Oh yeah, I'm at the airport. I'm on my way home," and instead it was his boss. I guess they had found his business card in his wallet and managed to call the colleague, and the colleague called me, and I immediately jumped in the car and drove down to San Luis Obispo. And it became clear that it was a very, very severe head injury. It was heroic measures that kept him alive. And it does beg the question, and I asked this in the book, was that the right decision? Because his quality of life has been so poor. He's still alive. I guess for those of us, and of course this is such a hypothetical situation, but for those of us that are cognitively astute and cognitively normal, if we were to look at that and say, if I were in that situation, would I want to be kept alive? I think my guess is that many of us would say no, because he doesn't have a quality of life, and it gets worse. On the other hand, he knows his children.
Okay.
He confuses them with other people, but we could do a whole show on that question, right? So did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. But so in this catapulted you though, and you say reluctant caregiver, and it's not, you shared this half of the story because I do want people to get the book, but everybody, I think, is a reluctant caregiver. And I love that you said that, because I don't think that anyone has the expectation when no matter what the relationship is, that we're going to care for somebody and have to do all the heavy lifting for them. The only kind of caregiving I think we can equate caregiving to is if you're a parent and you're raising children, because there's a portion of caregiving in that, a tremendous amount of caregiving in that. But then the kids they progress, they begin to help you. It gets, it's not the same when you're caring for someone with cognition, mobility, or someone who's aging and their bodies have become very frail where they can't assist or help. It really takes a lot of energy to do that. And so I think that they're on a different, by saying you were reluctant.
Well, yeah, they're on a different trajectory. They're going to get worse.
Yeah.
Particularly with Alzheimer's, yes. It's not going to get better. And it's probably not going to stay the same, right? It's
That's
going
right.
to get worse. And so, with David, we knew that was, he might get a little bit better, but the extent of his injuries were so massive that they knew he would never work again. He was basically cognitively like a 6 or 7 year old, and probably would get worse. And he has. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's, I agree. I think that there are very few that would say, "Oh, yay! I get to change. I get to give up everything in my life and just become focused on this person." And
yes.
However, yeah. we don't talk about the reluctance. We don't talk about the ambivalence. We don't talk about the resentment. We don't talk about the anger. Like, God, how could you do this to me? Which, of course, it's not their fault, right? And so you can't say that, and yet it's still a feeling of
right.
anger. I mean, I remember very clearly having anger toward him. It wasn't so much, why'd you get in that airplane? Because all of us get in an airplane, all the time. It's just the anger at the situation and the anger that you're in the situation you're in. So, I mean, all those feelings are so normal. And for some of us, honestly, I think it's worse than for others, or it's more, as you said, I'm an artist, I'm a singer, I do opera, I do musicals. I have a kind of a personality where I kind of need to do theater because it's a hunger in me. It's and that's kind of a selfish activity in and of itself, because I can sometimes do shows with my kids, but it's a bit of a jealous mistress, so and I talk in the book about, I adore my kids, but it's not, being a parent is hard, you have to be there for them. And
and you became a single parent of 2 children.
Right. And you don't ever expect, we like you said, when we have children, we expect that there's caregiving involved. We don't always get it or know how how extensive it is. And by the same token, we expect to be taking care of our parents to some degree. But right. There's a whole system, as you know, of housing and other kinds of care systems that are put in place for that exact reason. And nobody loves the idea of putting their parent in a home, but they're there for a purpose. I mean, my own father right now is in a home. He's 93 and he's in a home down in Los Angeles. But we don't expect it from our spouse. We just don't. And then especially when the relationship with that spouse is not perfect. But even if it had been, he became a different person. He was my husband, and then he was more than a child,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as you say, children grow, they change. You can talk to the children and punish the children and deal with the children with this kind of brain injury. I mean, I describe in the book at one point he had come for a visit. He was living in a facility down in Gilroy, and he came. We would have him come and spend time with us, have dinner with us, and I looked around and he had disappeared, and I asked my 8-year-old son at the time, "Where's Daddy?" And he said, "Oh, he took the car keys and went on a drive." And I was like, trying not to show my son how panicked I was. And I ran outside, and luckily my neighbor next door, who knew the whole story, had kind of stopped him. He had just driven, and I'm like, "David, I need your help cooking dinner. Come on, let's come back in." And he kind of did. He just gave me the keys, but that could have been. He has no business driving,
No.
So that's the kind of thing. And in that, I pictured my life like that somebody would have to be watching him 24/7. And I knew that I couldn't do it with the help of therapists, social workers.
No, I tell people all the time, do not be afraid of therapy, Rachel. If it can, it's not, first of all, with the stigma of any kind of mental health, wellness, all of those kinds of things, start with your brain, my friends. And so the reality is your brains hold your emotions, your feelings, your memories, the good and bad, the stuff that you don't even remember yourself, but yet it's affecting the way that you behave or your triggers. A therapist can help you talk that all out and to put it where it belongs so that you can live your best life. I mean, why live in the shadow of something that is already gone, that already happened, if you can do better? I mean, I just, and again, I'm not judging, I'm not judging you, and I don't do that. But
no, I don't feel judged.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, do please, folks, all of you, if you can get some form of, if even a support group where there's, free support groups where you can walk in and peer support.
Yeah, get it wherever it's offered.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the most one of the crucial scenes in the book, and I actually thought about starting my book with this scene, but ended up in the kind of about 2/3 back, is a social worker. And this social worker, who was employed actually by workman's compensation, because this was a work-related accident.
That's right.
And she dealt with this kind of situation more often than, too often, where there's been a severely injured or severely injured worker, and how to support the family. And she's the one that gave me the first permission to not bring him home right away. And I said, that's not possible. I can't do that. I'm not a monster. I'm going to take care of my brain injured husband, and she said, and I had just come out of the hospital. Was in for a severe abdominal infection, and I was there for like 10 days, and I just gotten out. I was like 95 pounds. I was about as mentally fragile as you could be. I had a 6 and a 7-year-old at home who were super traumatized. She's like looking at me and going, you're not in a good state right now. How about if we give you a little time to recover? And I was like, I can't do that. I can't put him in an institution, And she said, just think about it, just temporarily. And she said, I have seen other families implode.
Yes.
From taking care when they're not in a position to. And that line, and she said, if the guilt is too strong because you can't do it for yourself, do it for your kids, because they're not ready to have him home. They need you first. They need you well, healthy, able to be present with them, and then we can talk about bringing David home. And so that was the moment when I allowed that social worker to give me that option, to give me permission to make a different kind of decision than my obligation and my duty felt like. My sense of obligation. I'm a good Jewish girl, right? I do the right thing. But that's where everything changed, where, so I don't want to give the book away, but.
No, I don't want you to either. But what Rachel's talking about, friends of Life is a Sacred Journey, is the ability to say no to chaos and yes to life. And understanding that we make decisions sometimes that may appear to the greater public. And again, that they go, ooh. But as I always tell you, who made those rules?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who made those rules, and I'd like to have.
They.
Yeah, who are they? Where do they live?
Yeah, who are they?
Because I'd like to have a cup of coffee with them.
Yeah. And they have so much power, right? Because they're they. And, I think a lot of it comes from, like, I don't know, what we interpret as the Bible, or what we're supposed to do.
Yes, Rachel. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that in the car this morning, and I don't know why. I ponder, why are we beating ourselves up so much? It's like so much. When my thought was, when we know we're not perfect, why do we keep beating ourselves up for the parts of our imperfection and not celebrate the parts of us that are magnificent?
Well, exactly. It's that old, I kept getting the advice, rather than focusing on all of your shortcomings and all of the, all the shame and guilt you have, focus on, how can you stay in a relationship with David? How can you establish a relationship for them, for your kids and him? What can you do? I'm like, okay, well, I can go down to Gilroy and take them down there once a week. I can have him brought, because they would bring him up to to San Jose. He was in Gilroy, we were in San Jose, which is only a half an hour, Yeah. I can have him brought to their gymnastics show or their dance concert or their birthday party or whatever it was. And we can do that. So I can't be his full-time caregiver. So I'm not going to be the one who administers his meds, changes his diaper, and because he was incontinent for the first year or so. He was having seizures. It was hard. It was really, really hard. And I had to deal with, that guilt and shame was really a weight around my neck, like an anvil, kind of, that would just and I had to constantly work through it. Like, and part of the story, a major part of my story, is the expectations that his family placed on me, and how I would respond to this, and that when I didn't respond the way they wanted me to, the friction. And so I wrote the book because I think this circles all the way back to the beginning.
Yes.
As I said, I'm not, my training is in classical music and opera and musical theater, and then I was a cantor in a synagogue for many, many years. So very different than being a writer. Although I was always a good writer, I was comfortable with it, but I had to take classes, and because about 2 or 3 years after the accident happened, I just had this. As an avid reader, I was reading books about people whose spouses had some kind of traumatic incident, and it could have been like early onset Alzheimer's too. That's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
As you know, but had some kind of traumatic injury or stroke or accident, and how they managed the situation, and they were all about couples who were in love and were, their relationship was strong, and how that caregiver despite her, usually her misgivings and her doubt and her frustration, how she kind of rose to the challenge. Mm-hmm. My story wasn't that. I didn't rise to the challenge. I took a different path, and I couldn't find my story anywhere, really.
There you go.
And so I thought, I need to write this book for me, but for people who are struggling with this, and maybe need some permission to, certainly need to see they're not alone.
That's right. I
mean, it's not everybody who has a husband with a brain injury from a plane crash. I get that my situation is unique, but there are versions and variations of my story. Like I said, Alzheimer's, stroke. I mean, you could list some things off. A motorcycle accident. All of the above. And a lot of the time, it's not necessarily a cognitive issue. It's a maybe there's some paralysis, or there's some, but some kind of major shift where that person becomes disabled, and your role changes dramatically.
Yep. And the expectation that society has that women will just give up everything and take that role over is unfair, actually. Not everybody is a caregiver. I have a sibling that doesn't have children, and I know there was a time that people would say, well, what's wrong with her? Well, there's nothing wrong with her. She didn't want kids. I mean, what's wrong with her? I thought.
And thank God that she had that, because a lot of people have them because they feel like they're supposed to, and they don't really want to.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's another part of the story, that my son, and he has no issue. He's 24. Tomorrow is his birthday now, and my daughter's 25, but he is on the spectrum. And he's very high functioning. But, I was dealing with that at the same time, and my daughter has severe anxiety. So there were so many different things that were so many pieces of this puzzle that, it's one of those, if you can't walk in my shoes for 10 miles and then make a decision, you don't get to judge.
You don't get to weigh in.
You don't get to judge.
Well, the other side of this, before we close, Rachel, is
I could talk to you all day.
We should.
I don't want to
get together. Actually, is that we don't have the right to judge another person's decisions for themselves. And when people do that, and I will lean a little heavily on the fact that the women are expected to do that all the time. I mean, all the time. And then when you say no, because I love when you said, I said no. When you say no, everybody looks at you as if you've, come out and said something really vile. But when you say yes to yourself, you're a better person. I don't know what they want us to do.
There's it's not just black and white. There's
Yeah.
a gray. There's if you make a decision that seems more selfish, or it's not either or,
No.
I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like I said, I didn't just say, okay, David, you're on your own. Bye. I didn't say that. I said, I can't be your primary caretaker.
Right.
Here's what I can do. And
Yes.
I tried to do that.
Yes.
So there you go.
And that is key. When I talk to caregivers, I say to them, you may not be able to change the depends. Some people just can't do that. You may not be the one to be able to give the shots or whatever the actual stuff on a daily basis, but you may be able to read a book, or you may be able to sit in silence with that person. We have to do what we can do, and so that we walk away from that situation whole. Because again, I love the analogy, and I've been in the healthcare arena for seniors for now over 20 something years. And it's the airline thing, put your oxygen mask on first before, and it makes total sense.
Yeah.
And, but we're really good at those kinds of things, and it's harder to follow them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you're also, and I want to really lift this up, I love the name of your studio, by the way, Free Your Voice Studio, because that spoke to my heart, like, yay.
Right. Well, yeah, it's singing is so much more about just the pitch. It's the people that do it that come to me. It's like a hunger, to express. And it's one of the way, it's like a painter has to paint, right? And so much of the time in my work in my studio, I'm, rather than telling them what to do, I'm actually encouraging them to release tension.
Yes.
And tension that is based in all kinds of things, but it's usually, I got to control this, and they control by tensing their shoulders and tensing their neck. Of course, it's supposed to be the opposite, right? So I did have a couple of different meanings in that choosing that name. And thank you for acknowledging that, because
yeah,
and it kind of just came to me. I
looked it up and everything. I just love it that in the website she says you might meet Nala and Beanie, and they might join for the class. So
they sing.
They sing.
Well, above a certain pitch, Nala especially. Yeah. I mean, just like if I were out walking and there's an ambulance or a fire truck, she'll start to wail. It's the same. and at first I thought she was afraid, or she was her ears hurt or something, but no, I think it's a pack thing. So like if I'm singing or my student is singing, she thinks she's supposed to sing along, because we're a pack, Yeah, and I'm in.
I love you, Nala, if you can hear my voice. But,
she's around here somewhere.
Free Your Voice Studio is also available to you to contact for assistance in your music. I know there's a lot of you out there, because I have friends of you that are out there that are wonderful vocalists and are always getting better and better at it because of your practice. So Free Your Voice Studio, you can plug it in, take a pencil, write it down, and you can get a hold of Rachel for that. Then you can go to Amazon.
Or your independent bookstore.
Oh, get it in the bookstore. Get it in a bookstore.
Anywhere.
Yeah. Crash, How I Became a Reluctant Caregiver. I think that's important because the one thing that I have realized in this season of my life, and I'm thankful for this season of my life, is that we all become caregivers at some point. And we can do it from a distance. Which I did from a distance. I wasn't nearby when things happened, and so I had to help how I could help. And then sometimes it's because a friend that you go to your synagogue, your church, your walking buddy says, I have to do this, and this, and your knowledge helps them to seek knowledge about it and get resources. So always think about the connection. that you have. I always call it 6 degrees of separation, and I finally saw that movie, and so that's not what I mean. I mean 6 degrees of separation where we learn something, we share with another person, and then they share, and then the world just, I really do believe, friends, the world can become a better place. And Rachel brought up in her book, and in what I've read, the parts of the review of the book. And I want to remind you that I'm still, we're going to meet tomorrow, I believe it is, Be Kind to Yourself by Megan Logan. We're doing the 52-week workbook study together with a group of women, just to really be, and this is what we have to do, and not feel guilty about being kind to ourselves, whatever that means. And Rachel did that, not like out of, because we always go so negative on people, out of like this desire to do harm, but to say, this is me and this is what I can't do. So get Crash, read it, and then let's talk again about it on Life is a Sacred Journey. So Rachel, I just want to thank you for sharing your life. I know how hard it is, but I also know how releasing it is to share life experiences with other people, but with total strangers, it takes a certain amount of courage. So, thank you so much for coming to that place. Because caregivers, as you say, need to hear there's always another way to do something or to think about doing it, right?
Well, absolutely. And thank you, Michelle, for this incredible opportunity. I'm so honored to be a guest here.
Oh, and I'm so happy that I know you.
And we're kind of neighbors, right?
I know. I found that out looking at this. So I would love, we have to get together and have
I'd love that.
I would love that. So hold on one second. I'm just going to say goodbye to all of you. You have a wonderful weekend. You take care of yourself. I think the sun's going to be out a little bit longer. Get out into the soleil and feel the sun on your skin. And if you're a person out there that is sad, grief, depression, anxiety, and there's nobody else on the planet that you think you can talk to and share that with, 988. Text them, call them. It's the suicide hotline. They will help you. There's people there trained to help you. They will listen and get you what you need. Your life is too precious and too important for you to end it. Please don't. Don't. I know it's dark now. Dark. Sucky. Awful. But hang in there and dial 988. I know that's a lot for me to ask of you if you're feeling and you're suffering, but I promise you, you will be loved sometime down the road. 988, get some help, and we love you at Life is a Sacred Journey and wish the best for you as you continue your life journey. All right, guys, go out, pet a dog, pet a cat, hug a tree, hug yourself, look in the mirror and say, I am magnificent, because you know what? You really are. You really are, no matter what anybody tells you and no matter what your color, your gender, any of that gobbledygook. Okay? All right. Have a good time. Take care.